welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried, and I'm joined as always, and perhaps, well, I guess for the last time during the 2023-2024 season, by Mike Luciano. Mike, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Well, I'm looking forward to better days. Maybe the offseason where we get some new faces in, where our quarterback does not make awkward to say the least, potentially defamatory allegations against a popular entertainer on an afternoon slot and on ESPN.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's for legal reasons. But like when that, so we'll leave that to aside. That's a mess. We don't want to go near that with a 10-foot pole. What we will get near is a show that we're going to informally rename the Anti-Joe Douglas Power Hour, because a lot of our topics today are going to be ripping on Joe Douglas for things he did and things he did not do in the season. But before all that, you can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all those sites, YouTube and TikTok at the Jet Press for both. A like really does help for the stream. Like genuinely, algorithm-wise, it really does help. A download would be really nice. Thank you for that. A 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Again, that really helps, just boosting us. Thank you guys so much for that. But this is one where we got to get right into things because there were two big news stories. First, we'll do the ad read, and then we'll get into the two big news stories. The ad read, of course, coming from our friends at DraftKings. Have you signed up for DraftKings yet? Because if you're a new user, you can get up to 150 big ones in bonus bets instantly after following just 3 steps. Make an account, deposit, and then wager $5 or more in any sport. Whether your first wager wins or loses, you will still get the $150 in bonus bets. Just use the code FSBETS, FSBETS, when you sign up. That directly supports the podcast. You don't only get the bonus, but it helps support us, genuinely. If you're considering using DraftKings, please use FSBETS to maximize your first bets. This offer is only available for new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. Justin, Dalvin Cook is gone.
He is.
A statement that even if you were an anti-Dalvin Cook guy, I don't think anybody saw not finishing the entire season. Boy, did I get fooled. We'll go over 2 moves where I got fooled. One, because I at least thought the guy would play well, and he didn't. And one, because I thought the guy would play, and he didn't. We'll get into that. I thought Cook had a lot more juice left in the tank than he did. I thought it was like an Ezekiel Elliott situation, rather, with the Patriots, where he hasn't been great, but you could at least see there's some utility and a role for him. And if he just had a step quicker, he could be what he was. But you're like, all right, he's still a viable NFL running back for whatever that is. The Jets invested in Dalvin Cook thinking they had a viable NFL running back, and they just straight up did not. They got Dalvin Cook, who ran for 214 yards and no touchdowns with the Jets. And it was one of those things where there wasn't even a gradual decline. I mean, early on, the Buffalo game, the Dallas game, I mean, you could tell that Dalvin Cook was just not going to be what he was with the Minnesota Vikings. It's kind of sad. I don't want to pity him like that, but it is kind of sad that a player who had that nice of a career in Minnesota had to peter out like this. But he is gone, allegedly to get a shot with a playoff team. I don't know who would sign him. It is kind of funny, though. I think Vikings fans probably were laughing at us too because we were coping when they signed Dalvin Cook, and they're like, "Oh, just you wait till he starts playing." We're like, shut up. And then now we're knowing. I've seen teams from all over, Cleveland, Baltimore, the Cowboys. Des Bryant wants to sign him. They're like, "Oh, he's a Pro Bowl running back who didn't get a lot of usage." I'm like, well, there's a reason he didn't get a lot of usage, and that's because he sucks. And it's very funny to see that kind of happen in real time, the realization of that.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's the exact same thing that Jets fans were doing when they signed him. They're like, "Oh, we got a Pro Bowl running back. We got to have the best running back tandem in the league." Nah, no. And I know a lot of this is going to be said with the benefit of hindsight, right? But you can go back and find some of the streams we did before the Jets signed Dalvin Cook. I was not a fan. I was not a fan of the signing when it happened. I tried to talk myself into it. When it happened, I was like, all right, optimistic take. Maybe he still got something left. But now looking at it with the benefit of hindsight, I think the Zeke comparison is fair, but there's also some key distinctions. Because I think with Dalvin Cook, the reason he has aged more worse than Zeke is because Zeke at least can still have a role in an NFL offense. Zeke is still a good short yardage back. He's always been a good short yardage back throughout his career. He's not a bad pass blocker. He's a good pass catcher. He does not have fumble issues. He only fumbled, I think, once over the last 2 seasons before this year. Like guys like that can still have a role in an NFL offense. Dalvin Cook, you can't say the same. Dalvin Cook's calling card was his big playability, his explosiveness. That when he was at his peak, when he was in his prime, he was one of the most explosive and dynamic running backs in the NFL. But once that was gone, and it's very clearly gone now, what's left? He's a very bad short yardage back. He's always been a bad short yardage back. He has fumble issues. He has drop issues. He's not particularly good in pass protection. What role does Dalvin Cook have in an NFL offense in 2023? As we saw this year with the Jets, he shouldn't have one. He just doesn't have one. So I'm not shocked at all that this is how it's gone down. No, he wasn't this bad last year with the Minnesota Vikings, but it's also fair to say that running backs with a ton of tread on their tires, because even though Dalvin Cook's 28 years old, he's a very old 28. He had a ton of carries during his time in Minnesota. He had a ton of carries at Florida State. He has been a bell cow back pretty much everywhere he's gone. So he's got a lot of tread on his tires, where as opposed to someone like Raheem Mostert, who's 31, almost 32, he has not had, I don't think he has nearly as many career carries as Dalvin Cook. There's a difference there. But it's not surprising at all that a guy with a lot of tread on his tires, a lot of career carries, got significantly worse, because that's generally what tends to happen with aging running backs. They decline exponentially. And we saw that with Dalvin Cook this year. I know that, the agent speak is coming out in those Tom Pelissero tweets and the Adam Schefter.
They texted him that exact thing.
Where it's like,
he's so obvious.
Yeah, it's like minimal usage, fresh legs, dynamic playmaker. And it's like
dynamic.
That's what they called him, a playmaker, dynamic. They used the word dynamic. And I'm like, man.
Dalvin Cook's longest run this year?
14.
Oh my God. Wait, no, that's not it.
It was 14 yards.
It was 14 yards.
14 yards was the longest out. And honestly, that's like
Justin, don't hate on the guy. He had a 15-yard catch. Playmaker.
Oh, look at that. Dual threat. I don't see a role for him on an NFL offense in 2023, especially one that is contributing, or 2024 now, especially one that is competing for, not only a playoff spot, but to go beyond that. So I hope he signs on with another team just for his sake, but I really don't. I don't see a home for him. I just don't.
Alan Jerkins and Chad, I admit I was excited about the Cook signing. I mean, I was too. I mean, we could argue like the degrees of how done we thought he was. Justin was pretty, had good foresight there. But I looked at his production with an iffy offensive line in Minnesota. I'm like, all right, even if he's declining, like I think there's more than 200 yards left in him. But Joe Douglas, because this is going to be an anti-Joe Douglas stream, he committed 3 major errors on the Dalvin Cook signing. Number one, just plain overvaluing Dalvin Cook. He thought he had more left than he did. A lot of people did. So did Joe Douglas. Hindsight is what it is. Bad move. Unquestionably bad move. Number two is I think he undervalued Breece Hall, because I think he thought with him coming back from an injury, and of course he thought he was going to have Aaron Rodgers, but I think he thought Hackett's going to probably split carries. It'll be Cook and Hall. That way we won't put too much on Hall's plate. And then immediately Hall emerged as like an every down bell cow back. So then even if Cook was playing better than he was, the need for Cook goes away because you have Hall. So even if Hackett would want to split carries, we probably would have been screaming and yelling about, why are you splitting carries? Give the ball to Breece Hall. I think we were doing that early in the year. And that Dallas game, he had 4 carries, Breece Hall? Mm-hmm. Like it became very early on they needed to get him the ball. And at least in the end of the year, they're finally wising up to that. And then number 3 is I think he overvalued Allen Lazard and the wide receiver core, because I bet he thought instead of adding another wide receiver, cough, cough, DeAndre Hopkins, cough, cough, we're going to roll with Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard. We probably thought Corey Davis too before Corey Davis retired. And we'll have Aaron Rodgers at center, and it'll all be great and zippity doo-dah. We'll be doing sunshine and rainbows, all holding hands, and Jets are great. That's what he thought. And then Corey Davis retires. Allen Lazard performs not only bad, like we've seen bad free agent signings, but for year one of a guy on a 4-year deal, I mean, you could tell right away, bad deal. Well, not right away. He actually started the year okay, but like halfway through the year, he just fell off a cliff and couldn't do anything right. And then, of course, Joe Douglas saying, you know what, Allen Lazard will be fine. We'll get a running back. That'll fix our offense. So those 3 poor evaluations in tandem all contributed to the Cook signing and why it really didn't work in New York.
Yeah, Lazard is like I wasn't a fan of the Allen Lazard signing as well, and I made that clear at the time too, but I didn't expect him to be this bad. I'm not surprised at all that Dalvin Cook is this bad, because again, he was not very good last year despite what the box score numbers show, and again, running backs decline exponentially. So I'm not surprised at all that it kind of snowballed with him, also behind a bad offensive line and in a bad system. Lazard, I'm very surprised he was this bad.
He was nowhere near that bad in Green Bay.
No, he wasn't. I thought he was a high-end wide receiver 3 going into the season. That's what I said. He's not that. Like, I don't even know if he's a wide receiver 4 at this stage. He will be next year. He'll have to be either wide receiver 3 or 4. I don't think he'll be wide receiver 2, but I didn't expect him to be this bad. The other part about it with Dalvin Cook too is like, it was such a weird team fit. Like, others have pointed this out too. The Jets, like, if they were going to sign a veteran running back, Ezekiel Elliott made more sense. And I know it's easy to play hindsight with Zeke. I think he's been a little less washed than I thought he was going to be going into this year. He's still only averaging like 3.5 yards per carry. So it's not like he's been lighting it up. Although Patriots offense very bad. O-line's been beat up. I get it. But he's at least played an important role for that team. He's not been bad for them. But he just made a lot more sense. Like, again, if they wanted a compliment to Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook's the worst possible compliment, because everything that Dalvin Cook does well, or at least used to do well, is what Breece does well. Like, that's Dalvin Cook is the explosive big play guy. That's Breece. Breece is that guy. You want a short yardage guy. They already criticized Breece Hall earlier in the year for not being able to grind out those tough yards. That was a point Robert Saleh made to the media. Well, you don't have anyone on the roster that could do that. If you don't think Breece is probably the best at doing it of the guys on the roster, and that's not saying much. Dalvin Cook is not going to be that short yardage guy. He's not going to be a pass catcher. He's not going to be a guy you're trusting on third down. Basically, he's what Izzy Abanikanda is right now. Like, that's what he is. And so if you were to sign a compliment to Breece Hall and somebody who can shoulder that load, Dalvin Cook never made sense. Like, it just never made sense to me. And I want to throw out one more thing too, because you mentioned overvaluing the running back position or overvaluing the backup running back. They paid $7 million to Dalvin Cook. That was the most guaranteed money, or at least I think just the highest salary that any running back in free agency signed for this offseason. The highest paid running back this offseason. The Jets signed in August.
Well, Miles Sanders got more money year-wise too. Though.
Yeah. Well, because
look how that turned out too for Carolina. Jeez.
Awful contract. But yeah, so Dalvin Cook's cap hit this year, $7 million. DeAndre Hopkins cap hit, $4 million. And I will continue to bang the drum of the Jets should have at least made an attempt to sign DeAndre Hopkins. If anybody in chat responds with, "Oh, he wouldn't have signed here," you're getting blocked. I don't care. Like, I'm so sick of hearing that shit because it's not true. It is. To
be fair, I'd be pretty upset watching a whole season of we're mad at Garrett Wilson getting wasted. Imagine Garrett Wilson and DeAndre Hopkins getting wasted at the same time. It wouldn't
be wasted as bad. Like, the offense would be better. The offense would undoubtedly be better because chuck it in the vicinity of DeAndre Hopkins. He's still making a play. People had the audacity to try and say that DeAndre Hopkins was washed after last year and that Dalvin Cook wasn't. That was a clear sign that they did not watch football in 2022, because DeAndre Hopkins is clearly not washed. And guess what? He's still not washed this year. He's been very good in a really bad passing offense. Dalvin
Hopkins had 80 yards a game last year with horrible quarterbacks, because that was what Kyler Murray got hurt. And this year, too, with Ryan Tannehill getting benched and a rookie in Will Levis, who I actually think is playing okay, but one of the big problems with him right now is his inaccuracy. I think he's playing good for where he got picked right now.
Sure.
He's just not like super hyper accurate. Even with that, 68 catches, 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Right. Like, what do we do? You tell me the Jets couldn't have used that guy? The Jets didn't want him, but they wanted Dalvin Cook, but they wanted Odell Beckham, who I know just made a really good catch this past weekend. But injuries with him, clearly not as good as DeAndre Hopkins. It's just, you're right. This is going to be the Joe Douglas, shithousery podcast. Like, we're just going to shit on him this episode because it's deserved. Like, it's genuinely deserved, because everything that Joe Douglas did, and I've said this before on the show, every possible move that he made at the wide receiver position this offseason was the wrong one. Like, he didn't make a single correct decision. And passing up on DeAndre Hopkins to sign Dalvin Cook for more guaranteed money, for a higher cap hit in 2023 was a big mistake.
The worst part, too, about Joe Douglas is we thought he had a guy at the trade deadline. Like, I mean, how often were we screaming trade for Hunter Renfrow? And he didn't. Now, the whole Devontae Adams thing is what he is, but that was pie in the sky. Renfrow seemed a little bit more like a reasonable guy to get. He doesn't do anything, doesn't get an offensive lineman or any of that. The only move he makes is he signs Rodger Saffold to the practice squad. And this is a move where originally I'm like, you know what? I could see it. Like, I know that he made the Pro Bowl last year after being really bad, which was kind of shocking because he genuinely was not good with the Bills.
Dalvin Cook made a Pro Bowl in 2022 too. Never forget.
But this is a guy who's a 13-year veteran. He very rarely gets injured. He has a history of being pretty good. He knows some of the Jets coaching staff. Like, outside of Buffalo, like with the Rams and with the Titans, Saffold was a pretty good offensive lineman for a very long time. So I'm like, all right, when you're pulling guys off other guys' practice squads, I don't mind this signing at all. Now, when they signed him, and you can look this up, it says it in all those reporter tweets, they signed him to the practice squad with the intention of elevating him to the starting lineup. Do you remember Rodger Saffold ever playing for the Jets? Did he even get a number? Did you ever see him in practice?
Do we have proof that he existed? Like, I've never seen a photo of this dude in Jets jersey. The Jets do all those behind the scenes videos, all the videos, like every week the social team puts out of like asking him questions. Never once was Rodger Saffold in any of those. Did he exist? Was Rodger Saffold actually on the Jets?
The funny part too is like, because Joe Douglas never talks, and Robert Saleh probably wasn't really asked about Saffold as far as I can remember. I don't think he got asked directly.
I think he was asked when they first signed him. I think they asked him a couple questions about him.
But beyond that, we have no proof he was even on the Jets.
None.
So then after weeks and weeks and weeks of where is he, like genuinely, this was the reason you didn't make the trade deadline for a lineman. And we're not saying Ezra Cleveland, is a great lineman. He's okay, but he certainly would have been a better move than Rodger Saffold. After weeks of that, finally he's gone. He signs with the Browns, another former Jet going to the Browns. He's actually from Cleveland, I think, so he is kind of going home. He's on their practice squad and probably gives them some depth for the playoff run. So this is a move that really baffled me for Joe Douglas, because he said, but through his actions, Joe Douglas said, don't judge me on the trade deadline immediately, because I know we didn't get anybody that you want. I know we didn't get Hunter Renfrow. I know we didn't get Devontae Adams or whoever the other receivers out there. I know we didn't get Ezra Cleveland. I know we didn't really do anything, but we got Rodger Saffold, and that'll fix our offensive line. And not only did he not fix the offensive line, he didn't do anything. Was he out of shape? I heard he was out of shape, but apparently not so out of shape, because the Browns just signed him. So you'd think if he was out of shape, then they wouldn't even consider him. So it's truly a mystifying situation, and it's an indictment on Douglas, because he did this move. Like, he did this move on the day of the trade deadline, knowing what was at stake, knowing where the Jets were, knowing what they needed. So, like, I'm more mad at him for this maybe than most people are, because a lot of people might just say, oh, it's a practice squad guy who didn't work out. It's a practice squad guy who didn't work out that you brought in at the expense of guys like Hunter Renfrow and other trade deadline moves.
The Jets announced this move at 3:55 on the day of the trade deadline. 5 minutes before the deadline.
The deadline's what, 4?
Deadline was at 4. 5 minutes before the deadline passed. That's when the Jets announced this move. That was clear. To me, that was like, all right, guys, we're not making a trade. This is what we did. This is our move. And at the time, I remember discussing it on this show and being like, let's see what he's got. Can't be any worse than the Xavier Newmans of the world.
They said expressly he was going to be on the active roster and start soon.
And this, again, I went back and forth with someone on Twitter about this yesterday, because I put out a tweet about it like it was a mistake by Joe Douglas. People were like, oh, it's just a practice squad signing. Who cares? It's no different than any other practice squad signing. Yes, it is. This is different, because we've seen plenty of NFL teams do this over the last few years. They'll bring in a guy mid-season, put him on the practice squad, get them up to speed. It's like a ramp-up period for them, because they didn't have a summer trying to learn the playbook, whatever.
Especially when he's older and a bigger guy, too.
Right. Jason Peters. The Cowboys are about to do it with Leo Collins. They're not signing him to the active roster. They're signing him to the practice squad. But Leo Collins isn't the same. Like, signing Leo Collins to the practice squad isn't the same thing as the Jets signing whoever the hell they signed to the practice squad earlier today. Some offensive lineman, Vitaly something. I forget. But
Vitaly Potapenko, the old NBA center. That's who they did. Or Vitaly Klitschko, the boxer.
Probably neither of those guys. But the point is, we don't even know his name. So clearly, that's not the same thing as when they signed Rodger Saffold, because the intent is not for Vitaly, insert last name here, to start.
Vitaly Gurman.
Sure. That's who it is. The intent is not for him to start this year. The intent when Rodger Saffold was signed was that he was going to go through a ramp-up period. They were going to get him up to speed, and he was going to get promoted to the active roster and elevated into the starting lineup. Instead, the Jets signed 3 different players off of other teams' practice squads to start at right guard instead. Xavier Newman, Chris Glazer, Jake Hansen. All 3 players signed off other teams' practice squads, were deemed to be better fits and more appropriate starting options than Rodger Saffold, who, again, let's not forget, was their midseason acquisition. That was their trade deadline move. They didn't trade for someone. They were presumably in talks for players. They didn't find any deal that they valued. And they're like, all right, we're going to pivot to Rodger Saffold. Well, Rodger Saffold never played, was never elevated. They're throwing out guys who were not even on the team a week before that out there.
I challenge you, Jets fans. Go on Google or wherever, find a picture of Rodger Saffold in a Jets uniform. Did he ever come to Florham Park?
Literally, I tried, Mike, because I made the thumbnail for this stream, and I tried to find a photo of Rodger Saffold in a Jets jersey. I don't even think he has a headshot. I don't think he ever like.
Was he in Forum Park ever?
I don't know. I don't think he ever. Okay, he does have a headshot. He has a headshot, but I couldn't use this as a thumbnail.
Mercifully, jeez.
We have a photo of Rodger Saffold in a Jets jersey, and that's it. That's all it is. But again, it's just
that might even be photoshopped.
It's a major whiff because we said it before. We said it on the show. They could have traded a 6th-round pick and got Ezra Cleveland, who is a fine offensive guard, I would say below average starting caliber offensive guard at worst, who's also 26, something like that. Potentially could be an option for next year as well. At the very least, he would have been better than the rotating degree of the rotating string of right guards who are just thrown out there, because also Jake Hanson's now hurt this week too. So I don't even know. I have no idea. Probably Xavier Newman is going to start at right guard again. Great stuff. Friend of the pod, Xavier Newman. Good guy. But yeah, it's wild, man. It's wild. It's a major miss by Joe Douglas in off season, in a season of a lot of misses. 2023. Is it a stretch to say 2023 was the worst year? I would say no. 2023 was the worst year of Joe Douglas's tenure with the Jets. I know he traded for Aaron Rodgers.
Relative to expectations, certainly.
Because I know you could say 2020 as well. I think 2023, there were so many things that weren't just like bad moves, but were bad moves even without the benefit of hindsight, where it's like at the time, I'm like, this is not a great move. Like, I think the process was wrong with a lot of things that Joe Douglas did in 2023, more so than in like 2020. It's like, all right, yeah, you could argue drafting Becton over Tristan Wirfs was a mistake. Like, you can absolutely argue that, but also Becton was pretty good as a rookie, and I get why they did that. Unfortunately, he just ran into significant injury issues, which he didn't really have before that. So you could argue a few things with 2020. I think 2023 has been Joe Douglas's worst year. And look, he'll be back next year, but 2024 needs to be a lot better. Like, there's no excuses. He just I feel like he leaned on the Aaron Rodgers trade and was like, this is it. And after that, my work is done.
I want to get to a couple comments in chat before we move on to our next topic.
Sure.
Brian Sternbeck, the Jets deadline move was leaking to Schefter. They spoke to the Raiders about Devontae Adams. And
yeah, honestly.
Apparently at no point on that phone call did they ask about Hunter Renfrow. That was just too much of a tall order for them. Patrick Cahill, Rodger Saffold being gone is hilarious. What the F was JD thinking with that one? I'll tell you what he was thinking. Keith Carter, the offensive line coach we don't like, said, hey, I know a guy who can fix our offensive line. I worked with him in Tennessee, and he was really good. Rodger Saffold. Well, okay, I'll sign Rodger Saffold. That's half the reason he's on the Jets, was Keith Carter, who we don't like anyway.
Right, and then that's talent evaluation. Like, that's completely talent evaluation. They bring in Rodger Saffold thinking he's going to play, and like genuinely, he was probably either one of two things happened. Either they brought him in and they quickly realized that he was nowhere near football shape, he was nowhere near being in shape enough to play in a live football game, or he was just that bad in practice that they thought that the young guys were better options. One of those two things happened. Either one is bad.
And then Dan on Twitter, there was 0 point of giving away anything. This team is a disaster. Not in the moment. They were still in it in the moment. Wasn't Buffalo a disaster like a month ago, and now they're like locked into the playoffs almost?
Right. They had
a shot to give it a real chance here to make the playoffs, and they didn't. They chose not to.
Right. And obviously the bigger issue is them not having a QB2, because I don't think with Zach Wilson or Trevor Siemian or whoever, Tim Boyle starting, I don't know if they would have made the playoffs this year. As we were saying at the time, they were kind of relying on a lot of luck to win some of those games, but give yourself a shot, especially with someone like Ezra Cleveland, who could be on the roster next year. Like, it's not like you're just trading for Ezra Cleveland and being like, oh, that's it. Like, he's gone. It's just a one-year move.
You get an advanced look at the guy. That way you're not blindly spending millions of dollars in free agency.
Here we are.
And yet here we are. There's no Dalvin Cook. There's no Rodger Saffold. And now there's no Zach Wilson, who apparently got the most severe head injury possible. He's got just gray matter leaking out of his ears because his concussion.
Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, they missed the pretty much the same amount of time, I think, for concussion.
They missed the one game, right? The Eagles game.
No, they missed a few weeks. They were in concussion protocol for a while, I think.
I think Sauce only missed the one, right?
And it's DJ Reed. DJ Reed missed a couple of weeks because they also had the bye week too, remember?
Oh, the bye week too. But yeah. So Zach Wilson, because of this concussion that he suffered in the Miami game, is out for week 18. And that likely means his Jets career is over. Now, Robert Saleh was asked about it, and he said, I still think Zach Wilson will have a good career in this league. I don't know how you could think that, but that's what Robert Saleh still does. And then he was asked about, is he going to be back? And he basically said, we'll see, which means F you, I'm not really talking about it. And I'm just disappointed, not like in Zach personally at this point, because I feel like our feelings are well been known about Zach Wilson right now. It's because these last couple games were supposed to be a showcase for Zach. Like, all right, if he goes crazy, because he went crazy in the Houston game, they're like, all right, maybe if he has a couple more games close to that, maybe the Jets could get something for him, like a late pick or something like that. Because some team will be interested in the arm talent and the mobility, and he's young, and he was in a bad system. Let's get him into my system, and then it'll work. I'm sure some team will have thought that. Now I don't really know that, because he had the great Houston game, and then after that, we didn't really see anything out of the ordinary for Zach Wilson. Like the Miami game when he played was every other Zach Wilson game. I know it was amplified by Mekhi Becton being awful, but it was, taking sacks, flipping it away, inaccuracy. We've seen this for 24 times in Zach Wilson's career. So that's why I'm more upset, is just because they're done. Zach Wilson's not going to be back next year. You can't. That felt like the end. This whole year felt like the end for Zach Wilson. I'm just disappointed in both him personally that he can't even be viewed as a positive asset anymore, and they just got to dump him on the side of the road, and maybe some team will sign him to a practice squad. I know he hasn't dominated, he hasn't been a backup quarterback even, like an NFL backup quarterback, but it is sad to see a young guy's career kind of peter out in real time like this.
I think it's January 3rd right now. I'm going to make a prediction. I think the Jets get a 5th round pick for Zach Wilson.
I would be elated. Are you kidding me? A 5th for Zach Wilson?
I think they get a 5th round pick for Zach Wilson. I think Zach Wilson showed enough this year. The biggest thing for me that I think will be preventing that is his contract situation. He'll be entering the last year of his deal, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, he'll be entering the last year of his rookie contract. And it's an expensive deal, although the Jets will have to eat some of that money for sure. That's what I think is preventing him maybe from getting more. But I think he showed enough this year that some team is willing to take a chance on him, especially because I think that Texans game is going to be the lasting image in a lot of teams' minds, where they look at this season, they look at Zach Wilson, they're like, hey, look what he did late in the season, basically his last full start, and he played really, really well, played the best game of his career. Maybe we can build upon that. And I think there's a few teams that would be willing to do that.
Easily defeated, though, by the question of, and then what happened?
I think there's a lot of teams that are going to look at that. Look, NFL teams take chances on players with high draft pedigree and high upside all the time, especially when it's quarterbacks and they go, I could fix him. That's what they do. The Cowboys just traded a 4th round pick for Trey Lance. We've seen nothing from Trey Lance. They give up a 4th round pick for him. We've seen absolutely nothing from him. And he's the 3rd string there. So I think there's going to be a team that's willing to give a 5th round pick or something along those lines. He will be traded. I would be stunned. Not stunned. I would be very, very, very surprised if Zach Wilson was just outright released. I'd be very surprised. I think they'll trade him. I think they'll get something for him. They save more money if they trade him as well. So I think they'll be able to find a taker. The real question for me, who's it going to be? I think that's a fun conversation to have. Which team's going to be interested? I know we've talked about this. I think we've talked about this in the show before. The Chiefs make a ton of sense for me. I think they're probably the team that makes the most sense. Andy Reid has the BYU connection. They don't have a QB2 behind Mahomes. It's Blaine Gabbert right now. Bring in Zach Wilson, try and see what Andy Reid can do with him. Maybe Reid can salvage him, because Reid's worked wonders with other quarterbacks in the past. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes being the primary example. I would like to see Zach Wilson in Kansas City. I think that'd be a great landing spot for him. The BYU connection with Andy Reid makes a ton of sense. That's the team that I think would be at the top of my list where I think he's going to go. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
See, before last year, because I thought he was gone after last year, my pick would have been the Rams, because you get Sean McVay,
sure,
and then you back up Matthew Stafford and just download information as a 3rd string quarterback in an offense that has worked well. When Stafford's been out, they've worked well with John Wolford and some limited quarterbacks. And now Mike LaFleur is there, and they hate each other, so that's not going to happen.
The Rams, honestly, schematically is a really good fit for Wilson, I think. Or at least
maybe Minnesota. Similar thing?
Minnesota, maybe. It's interesting to see what they do, because they still could bring back Kirk Cousins. That was discussed, apparently, that they might bring back Cousins. They have Jaron Hall, but
I think they might do both. I think they bring back Cousins, and I still think they maybe get a Michael Penix or Bo Nix in the draft. But
they could do that.
Going back onto the Jets talk, I just have a heart. He's not going to be a backup. No one's going to hand him a backup job after this year. So he's going to have to compete for it, if anything.
Yeah, I think he can compete for a QB2 job somewhere.
It's so like because I know there's going to be some GM out there who had Zach Wilson high on their big board.
Yep.
They just weren't in the position that the Jets were when they took him. And it's just that arrogance where they're just like, oh, I can fix him. My team's much better.
Yep.
Like Dan says here, Zach will end up on the Broncos. Oh, that would be. Imagine if Sean Payton and Zach Wilson.
Dude, Sean Payton would do that. He would do that to spite Nathaniel Hackett, to be like, look what I could do that Nathaniel Hackett couldn't.
He spited his starting quarterback halfway into 1 year, saying if you don't alter your contract, we'll bench you, which I don't even think is legal, collective bargaining wise. So
you know a good landing spot that I thought of before the show, and I'm like, this I would like for Zach Wilson, I would like to see this.
All right.
The Tampa Bay Bucks, I think, would be a really good landing spot for Zach Wilson. Assuming that the coaching staff stays, assuming that Todd Bowles, that Dave Canales are still there, because I don't think it's a guarantee. Canales probably could get a head coach job. He might get some offers this season. If Bowles is fired, maybe Canales is gone too. But I think him in that scheme, like I feel like Canales runs a very similar scheme to what they ran at BYU.
He's from Seattle with Geno, so it's that sort of stuff.
Right. And I feel like what he's been able to do with Baker Mayfield this year is a lot. Like I feel like Baker had a lot of similar issues to Zach Wilson earlier in his career, just making a lot of mistakes and just like he's got that same gunslinger trait to him where it's like he's always trying to make the big play. He's got a great arm. He's trying to do too much. Dave Canales has been able to reel in Baker Mayfield a little bit, and I think get him to play the best football of his career this season. I would love to see Zach Wilson go to Tampa, compete with Kyle Trask for QB2, develop behind Baker Mayfield, because it sounds like Baker's going to be back next year. I think that'd be a really good fit for him, a good system for him. Assuming Mike Evans is back, they'd have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Like that's awesome. I think that'd be a great landing spot for Zach Wilson. I could see it too. And I think Bowles has some ties to BYU. Like, didn't he like coach under Mike Holmgren or something who was at BYU? I think there's some connections there.
You really are believing in the power of that alumni association.
I do, dude. I think BYU is like a cult. All right, they're like once you're BYU, once you're a Cougar, you're like you are.
Let's hope we don't have a lot of Mormons in chat here. This is gonna be a problem.
I'm not saying no. I didn't say Mormonism, although
you did. So the school of only Mormons, you said is so.
I just said the university's like a cult. I didn't say that. But yeah, I think Tampa makes a lot of sense. Good landing spot for him just to compete for a backup job, because I don't think Kyle Trask has that unlocked by any means. And also there's a path to a starting route in the future if they move on from Baker at some point. So Tampa makes sense to me.
I'd say I do just want to rip down one narrative I keep seeing about Zach Wilson.
Sure.
Oh, the Jets just failed Zach Wilson. Not true at all. The Jets, you have a case for the Jets failed Sam Darnold.
Oh,
that is a case.
I don't even think that's the case. I think they did. I think
they did. Now, again, we don't even think Sam Darnold's that good because he went to Carolina and was just as bad. So now we kind of know what Sam Darnold is.
His development was definitely stunted by the Jets.
You can't even argue that. That was a case of a GM not putting together a team that could do anything. We were just ripping on Joe Douglas, but for all his faults, he got Garrett Wilson. He got Breece Hall. He got a better coaching staff than the last one. For whatever you think of Robert Saleh, I think it's better than the last one.
Honestly, the offensive coaching staff is debatable at this point. I'm not sure. I mean, 2022, yeah, that was a better offensive coaching staff. 2023
and 2021 because it was the same staff. So most of his career, yes.
True. Yeah.
So because of that, they didn't fail him. He failed himself, not for not trying hard. It just never took something. Some guys just get it. Some guys just don't get it. That sounds trivial and like kind of basic to just funnel down all that analysis into he gets it or he doesn't get it, but some guys do. And they tried how many freaking coaches did they bring in to try to make Zach Wilson work? And it just never took. I think it's more than black and white. I think, obviously the Jets failed Sam Darnold a lot more than they failed Zach Wilson. But I think you could very easily be like, all right, if Zach Wilson was in a better organization, was in a more competent situation, a better offensive line, better offensive coaching staff, that maybe he would have developed more. I think you could absolutely make that argument. Does that mean the Jets failed Zach Wilson? I don't know if it's that black and white. Like I think that they did a lot better for him than they did for their previous quarterback, which is not saying much, but they could have done better. They absolutely could have done better because ultimately the Jets offense still stinks, and it's beyond Zach Wilson. It's not just Zach Wilson why the Jets offense stinks. And if the Jets offense stinks, regardless of their quarterback,
that means that they did not put Zach Wilson in the best position to succeed. Like, you can't tell me that if Zach Wilson was drafted by the Chiefs, that he probably wouldn't be a little bit better, because that's just how football works. That's how player development works. So I don't think it's black and white, but I do absolutely agree. They failed Sam Darnold a lot more than they failed Zach Wilson. And I think the biggest issue with the drafting of Zach Wilson and with why Zach Wilson failed was because Zach Wilson was just not good enough. I 100% agree. But I do think that there's part of it where it's like, they definitely could have done more for his development. And who knows? Maybe in some alternate world, he was drafted into a better organization, a better system, a better situation, and he's a starting quarterback. We'll never know. But at where he is now, I would be surprised if he ever got there. I just think there's a lot that needs to be improved. But who knows? Maybe he goes to Tampa. Maybe he goes to Kansas City. Maybe he goes to the 49ers. That'd be fun. Maybe Darnold's a free agent. Maybe he goes and replaces Darnold as the backup in San Francisco. That would be a fun storyline. I could see him having success under Shanahan.
The Shanahan crime family getting their hands on Zach Wilson and turning him into basically Purdy this year.
He's the everything that Shanahan doesn't want in a quarterback, though. I feel like he's the worst Shanahan style quarterback.
But that's the thing is it would work.
It would. Well, but to be fair, I feel like Purdy's also not your classic Shanahan quarterback. Like, he's a little more improvisey, playmakery than like a typical Shanahan quarterback. So maybe Zach Wilson in that scheme could work, but he would need to get a lot better at his decision making in those first 3 seconds, because it's just he doesn't process quick enough.
Dan in chat, we now have a geriatric quarterback in command of the Jets, bringing his pals here. Now we're stuck with the bill. I know we didn't want to be talking about Zach Wilson this year, but this is a situation we're dealt. Think about all the problems we talked about with the Jets, the whole Dalvin Cook thing, the whole Rodger Saffold situation, Wilson's development. If our quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, was healthy and not accusing people of doing horrendous things on ESPN at 1 o'clock on a weekday in the afternoon.
I don't want to talk about it.
For no particular benefit or gain to anybody. Just be like, oh, yeah, just very nonchalantly say that. If that wasn't happening, the Jets are then winning games, and so much of this is minimized or not even discussed at all. True. Like he says right here, this is the only year I've considered not being a Jets fan. Really? The 2020 when they were 0 and whatever? Really?
I know. This
is the year that broke you?
I get where he's coming from, because there were vastly different expectations in 2020 than 2023. I think 2020, for me as a fan, was a lot more enjoyable than 2023, because we had a unified rooting interest. It was fun at certain points rooting for a terrible Jets team, and we all knew that the staff was gone at the end of the year anyway. This is just misery, and we know everyone's coming back anyway, and there's going to be no substantial changes. We just have to hope that it's better next year. So I get that. I understand where you're coming from, Dan. I think in my time watching the Jets, 2016 was also really bad. 2016, because it was the hangover after what was a great 2016 and even 2017 are kind of up there with 2023 for me in terms of least enjoyable years, where I was just this team sucks. I hate watching this team. This is just brutal, and nothing significant is changing. And I don't like who's running the show. I don't because 2016, 2017, then you had the Muhammad Wilkersons and Sheldon Richardsons, and you're just move on. I was
Muhammad Wilkerson, as we went on the jet press back in hot water, so loaded hollow points in the car. So not a great week for Jets trying to run afoul of the law here. So.
Not at all. Really quick before we get on to the next thing, we will talk about this more in depth, I assume, when we get to the offseason. But Josh Carrett, that's not the right one. Hold on. Whoa, ignore that. This is the correct one. Josh Carrett. Pulled up the wrong message. He said, who are your guys' top backup QB wish list? We'll get into this more in the offseason probably, but the 2 names at the top of my list, Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett. Those are the 2 guys that I think the Jets will have interest in, should have interest in. I know Connor Hughes has been hinting it on Twitter that the Jets realized the mistake they made at QB2 this season or this past season.
I hope so. They better.
You would hope, and that he does not expect them to make that same mistake again. So I do
imagine if they didn't.
Just
they did like a Zach Wilson. I didn't let the defense down. I didn't let the team down by not getting a backup quarterback.
If Trevor Siemian and Brett Rippon are competing for the backup quarterback job next year, what would you do, Mike? What would be your reaction if we go into the season? Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Siemian.
After I choke on my own blood and go to the hospital, I don't know because I probably wouldn't be alive to have a take. So
I think that they realize the mistake they made. I think they will get a better quarterback. Ryan Tannehill makes sense. He has ties to Todd Downey and Keith Carter. Hopefully Keith Carter's not even here, but he might be. And Jacoby Brissett also makes sense. I think Connor Hughes mentioned this, that the Jets were interested in Jacoby Brissett last offseason. They didn't obviously make a move for him.
Of course they were. They were always interested. I love how at every team, every time like a free agent is a good move, there's always leaks like, oh, the Jets were interested in it, and then they never did it. Like, oh, it's great that you were interested in it. I'm sure.
There is definitely a Hall of Fame. We got to do it. We got to do that as like a segment in the offseason where it's like Hall of Fame almost Jets team. That would be so fun.
Well,
like
Barr.
Yeah, Anthony Barr is like top tier. That's like if we do like an all-time draft of like almost Jets, Anthony Barr is number one. I feel like Derek Barnett is up there too. I feel like he was always rumored to go to the Jets.
I just love whenever, like, you ever hear like a GM who recently got fired, like on like a podcast or on TV or whatever, and they were like, yeah, I actually wanted to take CJ Stroud, but instead the team made me take Nick Mullins or something like that. Like it's like I had this perfect plan and everybody else screwed me up.
Not to call him out. I think Mike Tannenbaum is like the king of that. He does that all the time. Where he's like, oh yeah, I wanted to do this.
I wanted to trade for Peyton Manning, but they said no, you have to get Mark Sanchez.
Right.
As Dan says too, Hackenberg. Don't mention that. Don't you dare bring that name up. I'm sorry I brought that name up.
Oh, in terms of like backup quarterbacks. Yeah, I think
Hackenberg.
New Year's resolution for the Jets.
I saw the one game where Christian Hackenberg was active in his NFL career.
Wow.
And it was also the one game Cardale Jones ever played in the NFL. I was at that game.
You only played one game in the NFL, Cardale Jones?
Yeah, it was like week 17 against the Bills, and Fitzpatrick threw like 3 meaningless touchdowns in like 2018.
That sounds about right. Dang, I thought he played more than that. Yeah, he only played one game. Good. No, that's a shame. He played in the XFL though. DC Defenders legend, I believe.
I think I played in the XFL too, so that's not
all right. Wow, disrespect to spring football. That's crazy.
The XFL doesn't exist anymore.
We don't disrespect spring football on this podcast. We absolutely do not.
I'll disrespect leagues that don't exist anymore.
Okay, we're UFL fans. Real quick, I want to talk about, Mike, before we get into our Patriots preview. Really quick. I said I want to do this. I want to talk about the Pro Bowl. I want to talk about the Pro Bowl because Pro Bowl voting is, I believe, or it's done, obviously. Pro Bowl rosters will be announced tonight, I believe, at like 8 p.m. So I guess this segment is already going to age poorly. If you're listening to this after Wednesday, sorry, I don't know. This is going to age poorly for you, and you're already going to know the answers. But I want to quickly predict which Jets we think are making the Pro Bowl this season. Now, I know people are going to be like, oh, there's like 6-7 names. Like, realistically, they're not all going to make the Pro Bowl. I think I have 3 players who I think will make the Pro Bowl this season for the Jets. All right, I want to see if you agree, if you have any other names, whatever. The 3 players I think should make or will make the Pro Bowl. This isn't should, but will make it. Quincy Williams, who currently leads all AFC linebackers in Pro Bowl voting. Second is Roquan Smith. And if the Ravens are in the Super Bowl, he's not even playing. So I think there's a really good shot Quincy Williams is there. He's had an amazing season. He has the counting stats. I think he'll be there. He deserves to be there. Second, friend of the podcast, Thomas Morstead. Thomas Morstead, we did it. Jets fans did it. He is now number 1 in AFC Pro Bowl voting amongst all punters, passing Bryce
Barringer.
We did it, Joe. we did it. We did it, Thomas. Passing Bryce Barringer, passing AJ Cole. Morstead did the media rounds. The PR campaign worked. He is number 1 in AFC Pro Bowl voting. I think he deserves to get there. He has the numbers too. I'm pretty sure he still leads all punters and punt yards.
Although I do think he got a little lucky because Ryan Stonehouse got hurt, but
possibly. I think it's either him or AJ Cole. Because the Raiders have a reputation with punters and kickers. They always seem to have good specialists. AJ Cole, I think, is second in Pro Bowl voting behind Morstead. But I think the fact that Morstead has a reputation, he's been around for a long time. He's leading the fan voting, and he has the counting numbers. He has I think he leads the league in yards. I think he's in it. Third, last one, and it would be a travesty if he didn't make it. It has to be Sauce Gardner.
It has to be.
It has to be Sauce Gardner. I know he's 10th right now in total Pro Bowl voting. I don't know what he is at AFC. I don't care. I don't think the voting's going to matter. I don't think there's an AFC cornerback who has been better than Sauce Gardner this season. I think the only cornerback in the entire NFL, 2 guys that I think you can make an argument for being better than Sauce this year are Jalen Johnson of the Chicago Bears and Deron Bland of the Dallas Cowboys. Deron Bland, just because of the interceptions, the turnovers, the pick sixes, he has to be in that conversation. I think those have been the 3 best corners in the NFL this season. Pat Surtain is still good. He's not had as great of a year. Jalen Ramsey, I think he leads the Pro Bowl voting. He was great when he first came back. He's fallen off a little bit since then. Marlon Humphrey's good. There's a lot of good guys out there. There's not a single AFC cornerback who's been better than Sauce Gardner this season. He should make the Pro Bowl. I think he will. He has the reputation already. It would be a travesty if he didn't make it. So I think Quincy Williams, Thomas Morstead, Sauce Gardner. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. I also think that the Jets' record is going to do them a severe disservice because they're not going to put in as many guys I think should get in. It's funny. It would be funny if, as good as Quincy Williams, I think we all agree that Quinnen Williams is the better player.
Yeah, I don't
And
think
I think there's a good chance Quinn does not make the Pro Bowl, even though because of the sack numbers are down. But in terms of just how he's impacting the defense, like it's not, I don't want, maybe not as good as it was last year because he had like 15 sacks last year, but he's still doing all the things Quinn Williams does.
I agree.
So it would be a travesty for a guy to make a Pro Bowl, play exactly the same to slightly worse, and then not make it. So that's going to be tough.
I think Quinn Williams, my prediction, ready? Quinn Williams makes second team All Pro, does not make the Pro Bowl.
That wouldn't be uncommon. I think Ken Riley for the Bengals made like 5 All Pro teams and never made a Pro Bowl. So there's a lot
of guys out there who have made All Pro and not made a Pro Bowl, and it's crazy. So I think Quinn Williams, second team All Pro, doesn't make the Pro Bowl. I think Sauce Gardner makes it. I think he's the guy. Like, when people look at a Jets defense and you're asking a player or coach around the league, fair or not, they're going to say Sauce Gardner. So I think he's going to make it. But I don't think.
Here's what I want to wonder is, what do you think? Because obviously, like, not everybody who's going to be at the top is going to go to the Pro Bowl game.
Right.
What do you think happens to Garrett Wilson?
I don't think he makes it. I'd be very surprised. I think Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall deserve to be in there, but they're not going to be because
Garrett more so. But I mean,
well, even Breece is like top 5 in scrimmage yards this year. Like, he's having an awesome season. I know that, and we talked about this, I think, on the show too. Who are the best running backs in the AFC right now? Raheem Mostert's going to make it for sure because he's got the touchdowns, he's got the numbers. Honestly, well deserved. That dude is great. Travis Etienne, like, who's going to make it for the AFC? I don't know.
Etienne's averaging 3.8 a carry this year.
Right. Who's going to make it? I don't know. I think Breece deserves.
That's a good thought exercise. Along with who's the second best running back in the league?
Who's the best AFC?
Chris McCaffrey's 1. We don't know who 2 is.
Raheem Mostert is the second best running back in the NFL. I'm going to say it. And I mean it. I'm going to say it, and people are going to hate that take. But I've been on the Raheem Mostert bandwagon since even before this past offseason. Like, I remember back in the summer, go back to Dalvin Cook, I would say, like, Jets fans were like, oh, he'd be the best running back in the Dolphins. I'm like, no, he wouldn't. Raheem Mostert's great, man. You are sleeping on Raheem Mostert. Honestly, people are sleeping on Jeff Wilson, too. That man is not bad. Devon Achane's been really good for them. But yeah, I think Mostert could be the second best. But I think when it comes to Breece and Garrett Wilson, the stink of the Jets offense is just going to be too much. And I don't think they get it because of that. But if a bunch, like, I don't know if like Tyreek, if the Dolphins make the Super Bowl or the Bills or whoever, and, Tyreek and Diggs, they're not playing, and whoever's not playing, maybe Garrett gets in as an alternate. I still think it's unlikely. Honestly, Breece might have a better shot. I think there's a lot less competition there just because of that. But
what if something crazy happens? Like, there's so many dropouts that there's like a Laken Tomlinson gets in or something like that. And then you got to discuss like Hall, Wilson, and there's like 3 Jets on from this offense in the Pro Bowl. And you're like, what the hell happened?
The issue is Jets offensive linemen will not have the fan vote. Like, no fans, Jets fans were not voting their offensive linemen in.
Hey, Rodger Saffold made a Pro Bowl last year.
Well, because Bills fans were voting him in. Bills fans voting everyone in. But I don't think Jets fans were particularly pleased with their offensive line play this year. So I don't think the fans.
Hey, Tyler Huntley made a Pro Bowl last year. Anything's possible.
It's true. A couple of guys who also have a shot because of the fan voting. Thomas Hennessy, second in long snapper AFC Pro Bowl voting, behind only Blake Ferguson of the Dolphins.
That's just all fans. Like, there's no stats or anything.
Right.
That's a good test of fan voting.
That is literally a testament of how much fans appreciate their special teams, which it makes sense that the Jets are high there. And I think, speaking of that, Greg Zuerlein, I believe, is second behind Dustin Hopkins in AFC Pro Bowl voting amongst kickers. I don't think he gets it. I think Hopkins gets it. He's been great this year. But both of those guys have a shot, I think. But yeah, I don't know. There's a few guys who it's like they deserve it. I think Quinnen deserves it. He's not going to make it. I don't think he's going to make it. He might, but I don't think he's going to make it because he doesn't have the sack numbers. Michael Carter, the second, they still have not created a distinction with Pro Bowl voting for slot corners. They just did with all pro voting. So there's a chance Michael Carter gets all pro. I don't think he's going to get a Pro Bowl because they just don't have slot corners make the Pro Bowl. Although I know Jets fans, like, my prediction there with the all pro thing, I think Taron Johnson gets it for the Bills. And I think Jets fans are going to lose their minds when that happens, that Michael Carter didn't get the all-pro vote for nickel corner. But I think maybe he gets second team all-pro or something like that. But I think Taron Johnson's going to get first team.
He's going to get Bob Kuechenberg, if people don't know who that is.
Nope.
Okay, so story time. Bob Kuechenberg was a guard for the Miami Dolphins in like the Larry Zonka, Mercury Morris, those kind of days. And he was always, if you always look at like best players not in the Hall of Fame, he was always like right near the top. And part of the logic some of the voters kind of use, well, it's like, well, not everybody on that team could have been a Hall of Famer. So they used to kept guys out. So the logic is always, I've heard that used before where they're like, all right, not everybody on this defense can be in the Pro Bowl, especially when you're bad.
Right.
kind of thing. Like, that's why Donnie Sheldon get in the Hall of Fame forever. They're like, all right, Steelers defense in the 70s, you can't have 9 Hall of Famers on it. Or okay, Jets defense, you can't have 5 Pro Bowlers when you won 6 games. So that's going to come and bite him.
I feel like that's the same reason Abdul Salam is not in the Ring of Honor for whatever reason. Like every
Abdul Salam just didn't have like a very long
but it's like every other member of the New York Stock Exchange.
All right, now Pro Football Reference is what it is. You know, they've done unofficial sack totals. He has 21 sacks in 8 seasons.
But 8 seasons with the Jets is part of I'm saying Ring of Honor. I'm not saying Hall of Fame or anything, but he should be in the Ring of Honor.
Oh, here's a trivia question. Before 1977, what was his name? What was he known as?
I have no idea. I bet
Larry Falk.
What is it?
Larry Falk, like Kevin Falk, the running back.
I feel like I've seen that actually. I feel like
changed to Abdul Salam.
I feel like I've actually seen that. All right, we're getting on a tangent here. Really quick before we get into the Patriots preview, Cisco in chat asked how we feel about Jermaine Johnson. I assume this is in relation to the Pro Bowl. I think he's had an awesome season. He's not going to make the Pro Bowl.
Good, not Pro Bowl.
Yeah,
he's not good. Definitely better than last year.
I don't think he's what is Pro Bowl level if Dalvin Cook's making the Pro Bowl, Rodger Saffold's making a Pro Bowl, Tyler Huntley. What is really Pro Bowl level? But I just think with positions like edge rusher and wide receiver and stuff like that, you need to be truly exceptional because there are so many great players at those positions in the NFL that it's really difficult to break through and make the Pro Bowl. In the AFC alone, there's going to be TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and Max Crosby. That's already 3 guys right there. Khalil Max had a great year. He might make it. There's just so many big names. He's not going to make it, unfortunately, Jermaine Johnson. Other guys that probably deserve a shout out, CJ Mosley, I think has had a great year. I know he's had a couple rough couple weeks, but he's been really good. Weirdly, he was 2nd team All-Pro last year. He wasn't pro. There's a guy. Mosley was 2nd team All-Pro last year. Did not make the Pro Bowl. So I think Quincy Williams is stealing his luster this season, and I think he makes it over CJ Mosley. But Mosley has been better this year than he was last year, and he made All-Pro last year. And then DJ Reed, I think, has also had a few weeks, but he's still great. I think he's still top 10 in PFF coverage grade amongst cornerbacks. So he deserves to be in the consideration. I don't think he makes it. Obviously, he's another guy who just gets overshadowed by Sauce, but I think he deserves a shout out. So yeah, I think Sauce, Quincy, Morstead, those are the 3 guys that make it. Justin Hardy might have if he was healthy all year because last year he made it. Last year, I think it was Quinnen, Sauce, and Hardy that made the Pro Bowl for the Jets. I think Ashton Davis is top 10 in special teams voting too. But anyway. Yeah, that's my prediction. We'll see if that's true in a few hours.
We'll also see on Sunday if the Jets end up finally breaking the losing streak against the New England Patriots in a game that I remember Justin was saying he's not rooting for the Patriots, but he would really like it if the Patriots don't end up with a chance at either Caleb Williams or Drake May, who could potentially haunt the Jets for the next 10 years. And if you look at Tankathon right now.
Whoa. You know what else I'm rooting for, Mike? This ad read by DraftKings.
Are you serious?
We got it. You forgot. We got to do it. All right, we got to do another one. All right, ready?
No, the transition.
That was a great transition, right? Jets fans, DraftKings is running a promotion that you won't want to miss. New users can place a $5 first bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. You'll also be rewarded with a separate no sweat single game parlay every single day when you opt in. All you have to do is sign up with our code FSBETS that is on the screen. Using our code FSBETS, FSBETS, not only gets you these great bonuses, but it also directly supports our podcast. Of course, we always appreciate that. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use our code FSBETS to maximize your first bets and parlays. It's always available to new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. I'm so used to doing the sleeper one. I had to get through the DraftKings one. Shout out to Sleeper. Still great, even though that campaign has ended, but still shout out Sleeper. Anyway.
That's not a sponsored ad read. He's just a fan.
I won my fantasy league this year, all right? And it was Sleeper, so I'm happy. I'm in a good mood. Anyway.
I started off 6-1, and then I went 7-10 or something like that, or 8-9.
I had a 6% chance of winning my semifinal game going into Monday Night Football, 49ers Ravens, and my opponent had Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel, and I had Zay Flowers. And I won.
That's not skill, that's luck.
Whoa, my team was still really good. I had a really good team.
Yeah, but in the moment.
Yeah, I got lucky to get there, but then I won in the finals. Also,
moving on, if you look at Tankathon right now, Carolina is giving the number 1 pick to the Bears, which, oh my God, poor Carolina. Owner throwing drinks on people, and now this. Washington is currently 2. The Commanders are 2. and New England is 3. Arizona is 4. They're all 4-12, 2, 3, 4, 4-12. And there is a situation where both New England and Washington could lose, and New England gets number 2.
Yep.
You just need a couple of very specific outcomes to happen. But right now, because of strength of schedule and tiebreakers, it seems like the favorite to get number 2 is Washington. Like it'd have to be a couple, almost like upsets would have to happen for that.
Well, the strength of schedule tiebreaker between them is a difference of 0.003.
Right, but there's other tiebreakers going into it and based on who plays each other the last week. But
right.
There's a whole chart that outlines like who needs to win for what pick to happen. There's like a chance a coin flip could happen, but
because I know the Commanders are playing the Cowboys, which is definitely going to increase their strength of schedule, and then the Jets play the Patriots, obviously. And the Patriots, that's going to decrease their strength of schedule. Obviously, there's other games going on that will impact it too. But yeah,
but moving on that's why I'm not as concerned about this is because if the concern is you don't want them getting Williams or May. Well, let's just say the order stays where it is right now. Chicago's at 1. I think that they could build a winner around Justin Fields with that pick. I just think it'll be hard for a GM to get the number 1 pick 2 years in a row and they trade out of it twice. So I think they end up trading Fields for like a second or something like that, a second something else, maybe the Darnold trade again. And then I think they take one of them. Maybe May. I think May might be quarterback 1 at this point. And then you get to number 2. Washington is, Caleb Williams. He's a DC guy, new owner going home. Then they get him, and then you don't have to worry about it. Well, they could get Marvin Harrison Jr. Well, they could also take a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. So I think to operate, I say all that to say to operate this whole game is I don't want the Patriots to get Caleb Williams or Drake May. I get the fear, but I'm sure some Patriots fans, when the Jets drafted Zach Wilson, were like, oh, crap, the Jets got Zach Wilson now. At the end of the day, it is picking a young prospect. Belichick also spent a pick on Mac Jones. We know how Mac Jones went. So we really don't have a history of him being able to identify quarterbacks in the top of the draft. Well, Jimmy G at the second round was like the best one he ever had. And even then, he didn't provide a ton of value for New England.
I think it's bold of you to assume that Belichick will be the one making this pick. I don't think he will.
I think he still is. I think he's just going to go until next year. I think he's just going to go until he retires.
I think he's gone.
I think Robert Kraft wants to be known as the guy who fired him.
I think I saw a report earlier in the year that they already agreed or they already determined they were moving on from him. So I don't know. We'll see.
I saw one the other day and said they already agreed he's coming back.
Well, conflicting reports. I don't know. I would be very surprised if he was back next year. I think it'd also be a big mistake. But hey, man, as a Jets fan, I hope it happens. It's crazy for me to say that. But as a Jets fan, I hope Bill Belichick is the head coach of the Patriots in 2023 or 2024, especially because that means he makes this pick. And I do not trust Bill Belichick as a drafter.
Now, looking at the Jets right now, they currently have the number 8 pick. If they win, I believe the absolute highest pick they can get is number 12 overall.
Yep.
So that's the absolute best. The worst case scenario is they go down to 12. Right now, they're at 8. And I could see why some Jets fans might want to stay at number 8 because there's a higher chance that Olu and Joe Alt, one of them, will be available then. And I get all that, but I just can't put it past myself to look at a team, even though it's Trevor Siemian against. By the way, the New England defense is still really, really good. They had Josh Allen completely confused in that game. That's still a really good defense. I can't look at a team that has a legitimate chance to finally break the streak and be like, nah, go ahead. Yeah, go beat us. It's fine. Like, it goes against my character, like just who I am as a person.
I understand that, Mike. I really do. And I will never fault anybody for rooting for the Jets to win, nor should you fault anyone for rooting for the Jets to lose for draft position. I think it's fair to do both. Don't please fandom. Do whatever you want. Root for the team however you want to root for them. I just I know the argument of, oh, you never know how a draft's going to work out. People thought Wilson would be good. Jets got number 2 pick, whatever. You have a higher chance of hitting on better draft picks. That's just statistically true. If you have the 8th pick, you are more likely to land a better player than if you are picking at 12. It is far from a guarantee, but it's just a better odds of that happening. Especially, I think in a class like this, I would say I'll put it right now. I think it's a 90 to 95% chance the Jets draft an offensive lineman, an offensive tackle in the first round. It's rare that we could say that going into a draft that we're so certain about one position being the target, but it just makes the most sense by far. Unless they don't make a move for wide receiver and somehow Marvin Harrison or some receiver they love is there when they're picking Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, whoever, unless one of those guys is there and they love them. But I think offensive line makes the most sense. And in this class, there's 2 very clear like top level tackle prospects, Olufoshano and Joe Alt. Sure, Amarius Mims, whoever, JC Latham, like there's a few other guys out there too. And we have no idea how they're going to project in the NFL. But we can say that the odds are better that a higher pick and a prospect with a higher pedigree is more likely to work out. And so because of that, I want the Jets to lose this week. That sucks. I don't like saying that. And I think the part of me that is wanting the Jets to win the most is the part that goes, because I think Belichick is gone after this year. This is the last chance to break the streak, in my opinion. In my mind, going into this game, I'm expecting this to be the last game that the Jets play against Bill Belichick. And if they lose, that would mean that they did not beat Bill Belichick for the final 8 years of his career. And that's pretty insane. When's the last Jets head coach that's lasted 8 years? Like, let alone.
Has a Jet head coach lasted 8 years?
How long was Weeb Eubank there?
God, think about that.
Might be Weeb Eubank. I have no idea.
We'll find out now.
It wasn't Rex. It wasn't Herm Edwards. It wasn't Mangini. It wasn't. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Weeb Eubank lasted 10 years. Okay,
there you go. So for almost the entirety of Weeb Eubank's coaching career would be the time frame that the Jets have gone without beating Bill Belichick. And if Bill Belichick retires after this year or goes somewhere else, mutually part ways, whatever they do, this is their last opportunity to do so. And so that part of me is like, damn, it would feel good to end his career, end his Patriots career with the Jets beating him. Wouldn't that be great? However, the cynical part of me, the cynical Jets fan in me, is like, if the Jets do that, the Patriots are going to end up with a top 2 pick because there's still, I think I saw odds, there's a 23% chance they end up with a top 2 pick. So not great odds, but totally possible. And if they lose that game, it's definitely possible they can end up with a top 2 pick. And if that happens, and the Jets are the reason that the Patriots end up getting Drake May or Caleb Williams, I am very certain, as a cynical Jets fan, that quarterback is going to be really good for them and is going to torment the Jets forever. And we will forever look back on this one meaningless game that the Jets won with Trevor fucking Siemian as their quarterback as the reason that happened. And Mike, I don't want that to be a possibility.
They could be the guy who signs like Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson and then get Marvin Harrison Jr. And then that's another.
And that also would suck. I don't want them to have Marvin Harrison Jr. either, but
they're already here. So like,
I know. Well, if they win, I don't think they get the number 3 pick. They would probably fall a couple of spots. Because the Cardinals, I mean, unless the Cardinals win, but it would come down to strength of schedule tiebreaker with like the Giants, and the Giants play the Eagles.
Giants would be ahead of them. They would be behind the Chargers, so it'd be like 6 or something.
Well, but the strength of schedule could change there, so we don't know. Either way, I don't want the Patriots getting a chance at the top 2 pick. That's why I want the Jets to lose this week. But look, I'm not going to be sitting there rooting hardcore for the Patriots. It's not in my blood. I can't do it. I hate that organization. I don't like Bill Belichick. I can't sit here and be like, yeah, go Bailey Zappi. But I will not be upset by any means if they lose that game. And part of me is going to be like, yeah, like, good. I'm happy this happened.
The funny thing is we're going to do predictions now. I actually think the Patriots are going to win. I'm going to say something like 10-6, if I'm being honest. Yep. And that's not even a joke because legitimately Bill Belichick is not going to take his foot off the gas against the Jets because it's Bill Belichick against the Jets. That team had nothing to play for last week, and they were giving Josh Allen maybe even a harder time than the Jets gave him. I mean, they beat up on Josh Allen and the Bills. Like, that defense, like, we make fun of them because they're bad this year. The defense is still very good. For all of Bill Belichick's faults, the guy can whip up a defense with a bunch of random guys immediately. Now, Bailey Zappi against this defense, that could be a problem too, as we've seen in the past. But I just don't see Trevor Siemian in New England. It's going to be like the Luke Falk game. Remember that? Luke Falk's first start.
I don't want to think
about Luke 3 against the Patriots. Speaking of Trevor Siemian, the guy who replaced Trevor Siemian.
I don't want to think about Luke Falk in 2024, Mike.
I do remember, though, my last Luke Falk thing. When he came in for Siemian, I'm like, he actually did okay against the Browns. He actually looked pretty good. He was like 20 of 25. I'm like, okay. And then that happened. I'm like, oh, wow. Look at this.
Yeah.
I got fooled by him in the pre-draft. I thought he was going to be good. He just didn't have an arm.
I'm starting to think maybe your QB evaluations aren't so great, man. I don't know.
DJ Stroud QB1.
Stroud, you got Stroud. I don't know. I'm thinking about Desmond Ridder, and I'm like, damn.
And I technically had a 5th round grade on Brock Purdy, so I was higher than the consensus on Purdy.
Okay, that's something. There you go.
And I think I actually, what was the other crazy one I had? Was it Brett Rippon? I thought I was going to be playing that.
Jets legend. I hope Brett Rippon plays. I want him to play on Sunday so that we can say that the Jets played was it 5 different quarterbacks this season? Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, Brett Rippon. I hope that he plays so that we can say the Jets played 5 quarterbacks because that'd be pretty funny. But
yeah, you think we're gonna win though?
Yeah, I think the Jets are gonna win. I think the Jets are winning this game because I'm going
underdog. They're 2.5-point underdogs.
I'm going well, but it's a road underdog. So if it was neutral site, they'd technically be a half point.
Well, they're on the road though, so
I agree. They are. You're right. I think it would be. I don't know. I'm going pure emotions here. I'm going pure emotion based, and I'm saying I could see a scenario where the Jets win, and the Patriots end up getting a top 2 pick, and Jets fans are all happy and excited. They're like, we broke the streak. We're sending Belichick out. The final shot of Bill Belichick walking off the field as a Patriots head coach is him, just moping about a Jets loss or losing to the Jets, and people are excited. And then I'm just sitting there in like my little corner, like, but maybe this isn't a good thing. Like maybe this isn't the best thing in the world, but I can't say that because I get screamed at.
That image of him with the hoodie up, like at the end, like defeated and disheveled.
All right. Part of me definitely
that image. I'd frame that on my wall.
I can't lie. Part of me would absolutely love if the parting image of Bill Belichick as a head coach of the New England Patriots after 23 years or whatever it's been.
Trevor Siemian kicking his butt.
It's Trevor. Okay, all right. I'll take it back. If the Jets absolutely light up the Patriots, I will love it, and I don't give a shit about draft position. If Trevor Siemian drops 35 points in the Patriots, I don't give a shit about draft position. I don't care if they get Caleb Williams or Drake May. That will be one of the best football experiences I've had in so long.
Trevor Siemian has the Matt Flynn game.
Yeah, if that happens, that's fine. But if the Jets win 10-6 or whatever, 6-3, and they lose on a draft position, I can't be. I'm not going to be ecstatic about that. But it's not like it is still the Patriots, and I do think it is Bill Belichick's last game with the Patriots. So I won't be devastated. But I think the Jets win. That's my prediction. I think the Jets win. I think they find a way to pull it out, even though Belichick could be going balls to the wall, just all out. If this is his swan song, he wants to go out, guns blazing. I still think the Jets find a way to win, and they win 13-7. I'll one-up you on your 10-6, and I'll give you a little more scoring. 13-7. Jets win, and they go in. What that would be? They finish 7-11. Cool, fun stuff. They end up with like the 11th pick in the draft. Patriots, maybe they get the number 2 pick. That's my prediction. I hope it doesn't happen.
Belichick, he probably trade out of that pick. He probably go down to 5.
I don't think Belichick gets the opportunity. I really think he's gone. I'd be stunned if he's back next year. We'll see.
Hey, Geno Smith, week 8. Remember that? Geno Smith against the Dolphins?
When he was with the Jets, you're saying?
Yeah, it was week 18. It meant nothing. He went like 20 of 26, 400 yards.
I think he was in week 8. Yeah, Geno Smith that last game, that was the best game of his career. It was perfect passer rating.
Yeah. Maybe that'll happen. Come on, that would be
if Trevor Siemian does that, dude. Please. What if Wild?
I would bring him back as the 3rd string quarterback next year just for that.
What if wild scenario Trevor Siemian gets hurt? I don't want to wisp. I don't want him to get injured. But what if he gets hurt? He gets knocked out of the game. Brett Rippon comes in and absolutely lights it up. What if he
leads like a late comeback drive to like break his heart?
What if he just lights it? What if Brett Rippon throws for 350 yards off the bench and 3 touchdowns?
Oh, I'll be so mad.
Just imagine what the discourse will be following that game, and imagine we'll now have an entire offseason to discuss Brett Rippon because he will be discussed. And that one game, I guarantee you that one game, if he were to do that, would lead to discussions of, well, maybe Brett Rippon should be the backup quarterback next year. I guarantee it. And honestly, for chaos, I want that to happen now.
So thank you guys for tuning into our final weekday show of the 2023-2024 season. We'll be back with the Wednesday shows as regularly scheduled next week and all that. But this is our last one before a 2023-2024 game, a season that, we just had so much fun covering, legitimately fun covering. Watching is a different matter. We have not had a lot of fun watching these games. Because our heart got ripped out through the back of our skulls in 4 plays.
It's so brutal.
But there you go. It's metal as hell is what it is.
Christ.
But hey, what did it not feel like that?
Now that you mention it, that's exactly what it felt like. You're right.
Exactly. Yeah. So before you get on my analogy game. So anyway, thank you guys for supporting the show. Thank you guys for tuning into this show. As always, you can subscribe on YouTube. You can download our stuff on Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast, all the podcast platforms. We're over there. Justin, final thoughts.
Well, real quick, we'll answer this question here from Josh Kerr in chat. Will you guys talk about the playoffs at all? I'd love to hear your thoughts about the NFL in general. Y'all are great. First of all, thank you, Josh Kerr. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We're still going to keep doing the midweek shows. So honestly, it's going to depend on what's going on that week. Like I know we'll be back here next Wednesday at 3 p.m. We'll be back. Not sure what we'll be discussing yet. We'll see what happens in the Jets-Patriots game. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about playoffs. I imagine we'll do some kind of like Super Bowl prediction during like a midweek show or something along those lines.
We did that last year, and I believe I got mine right. I believe I said the Chiefs.
Look at you. Well, I knew Dalvin Cook sucked, so.
All right. Somebody's got to make like an official like take scoreboard like tallies.
That would be really fun. We've been, so for anybody who watches the Guess the Jets on YouTube, I went back and we got a running scorecard of how often we get those right and how often we get those wrong, and we can have some more fun with that. As we mentioned, I think last week, there'll be a lot more fun coming in 2024. We got a lot of stuff planned for you guys. More Guess the Jets, more interviews, more other stuff, more streams. We're back here every single Wednesday, and maybe some other streams too. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's my final thoughts. This has been great. What a great year it's been, and I hope 2024 is even better. So thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at @Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Fried. Follow Jet Press at the Jet Press. Download Jet Press Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok. Subscribe, like, hit that notification bell. You guys know what to do. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and that includes after the season, and live immediately following every Jets game. So we will be back on Sunday breaking down the last Jets game of the season. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Fried. That has been Mike Luciano. We will see you guys on Sunday.
Happy New Year, everybody.